welcome back to Leah's Leaves. This is Claire. Hi, buddy. She's my 14-year-old. She caught a mouse last night in the new cabin. She found a warm spot today right above the pellet stove, so that's where she's hanging out. I haven't had a lot of opportunity to upload some video content recently, other than to show those of you who subscribe to the channel here at Leah's Leaves that I was in the process of moving. Wind got hold of my pile of pots last night. 5-gallon buckets, some planter pots, gardening trolley. This is the frequently muddy, wet yard right outside the house that I'm living in. Some drainage problems here, resulting in my aunt who owns the place having dug a drainage ditch over here in the driveway to try to get some of it out of the yard, and more ditch digging to come. There's this hill right here. That's a septic area, so I can't plant on there, but I can put containers on there. And it's the part of the property that gets the most direct sunlight, because the property is surrounded by big old tall pine trees. They're beautiful, but they don't allow a lot of light in. Under that tarp is my current gardening situation. The last things I needed to bring from Virginia are in the truck bed, and it's all buckets, bins, planter wall box, lumber, potting mix, raised bed materials. So I dismantled the ones that I had and will bring it here to rebuild. Can ignore the mess on the porch right now. We're still shuffling furniture around before I finish unpacking. We're expecting 2 inches of snow tonight, 2 to 4, here in the Allegheny Mountains. So all this stuff has to come inside tonight because the temperatures are going to drop. But this cool little place that I'm living, my uncle built this when he was a newlywed. And it's this old vintage cabin. I'll give you a tour here for a second. Don't mind the mess. But you see those old beams? He dismantled the original cabin part from another property and then rebuilt it here and added on to it. And along the way, other than the drainage issues, he had done some landscaping around here. So he has some little, like, edged out raised bed areas. He has this cool little claw tub. There's a hydrangea growing in there right now, but around a stone fountain. I think originally he had intended that to be a water feature, and then eventually filled it in and planted on it. All this stuff is just blank slate now. This is my little haven, and I can be creative out here. I can amend these beds, pull up what's old, and plant new perennials. I can put bulbs in there. I just moved in this week, and I'm still unpacking, as you can see, kind of organizing, but I'm so excited about the possibilities. There's a little shed, and there's plenty of room in there to set up my grow lights and stuff. So I'm excited about that. I'll have a seed starting area. And then right here, it's not a big bed. Way back in the day, I remember when I was a kid, Uncle Scott had tried for a while to raise hogs. And so this was where the original hog pen was, and then a little garden plot. And he only had a little garden because my grandparents lived 2 doors down from here, and they have the big one, which I'll show you in a minute. Except they're not alive anymore. The house got sold, and so that old garden plot sits vacant at the moment between the house my mom grew up in and her sister's home. I would say, looking at this, it's probably like 12 feet wide by 18 feet long, covered in tarp. But I want to expand this, and I think part of how I'm going to do that is use the in-ground bed that's here, that's being solarized now in the off season, and then put my raised beds right here alongside it that I dismantled and brought down from Virginia, because it'll get a good portion of sun. And then around the edges, I'll put in some vertical features and grow upward. I can do in-ground gardening, but I do have a bad back, and I switched to raised beds a few years ago because it was just easier to maneuver. But there are some things that will grow well in here, especially if I set up some row cover. So in the spring, for example, I can see my cole crops growing in here. Just traditional row. I'll plant some marigolds in between once the soil gets warm enough, and put some row cover on, and hopefully avoid the cabbage looper problem and broccoli worms and all that stuff. I also have been saving the round cardboard that comes in frozen pizza. I've asked some people to save some of those for me, because if you cut a slit and make a little hole in the center, you can fit those around the base of your brassicas, and they serve as collars so that the cabbage loopers don't get up the stems of your young cabbages. These blueberry bushes are as old as I am. They're gnarly. They need some love. I don't even know if they produce fruit anymore. They're very old. Old and overgrown. My uncle passed away a few years ago, and this has just been kind of growing wild in this area. So I'm bringing you out here to Kramer Pike, Kramer, Pennsylvania, the little village my mom grew up in, to show you the garden plot that started it all. This little area here was my grandparents' micro farm. And my grandma and pap gardened this every year, and they didn't grow much, and they grew in very traditional row style. They didn't plant any trap crops, or companion plants. They just grew a couple rows of beans, a few rows of peas, some tomatoes, some this and that. And it was all for one purpose. It was because my grandma was raising 3 kids, and she wanted homegrown vegetables at every meal. And what she would do is plan for 52 pints of everything. Pints or quarts. She wanted, 52 weeks worth of green beans, and 52 weeks worth of corn, and 52 weeks worth of tomatoes. Now, of course, in a plot this size, it's only a fraction of an acre. You can't grow all of that, so she would also depend on local farmers, especially the corn. They didn't have a lot of room to dedicate to sweet corn, so they would buy the sweet corn and then can or preserve it. Freeze it, actually. That was a lot of frozen corn, a lot of creamed corn, and a lot of canned corn. But this garden plot was where I would come in the summers, and I would pull weeds next to my pap, and I would bring kerosene out and get the Japanese beetles off the gooseberries and off the blueberry bushes I showed you. And this is where I learned to take an interest in gardening. And this is where I learned about preserving food and how good fresh food tastes. And I would sit on their back porch and shell peas. I would sit on the porch swing with my gram and shuck corn and shell peas from a very young age. And I have just loved growing food ever since. When I started my last year, I mentioned that I had been living in apartments and stuff for a long time. I didn't have access to land. In fact, one of the places I had lived didn't even have windowsills. There were no windowsills in the windows. So I couldn't even have plants in the windowsills, not even a little pot of herbs or anything. So when I moved to Virginia a few years ago for my job, I started gardening immediately because I finally had space to do it. Now I've moved here to Pennsylvania to start a new business, which I'm excited to tell you about. There'll be more about that in an upcoming video, but the short version is I'm a professional musician, and so I'm starting a business doing custom songwriting and keynote concert presentations for conventions, conferences, trade association meetings, and banquets. And the website will be Leah J Songs, leahjsongs.com. But I'll also keep up Leah's Leaves here and continue sharing my gardening adventure. So now that I'm back home among family, back on the original land where I grew up learning how to garden, and kind of have carte blanche here at my aunt and uncle's cabin where I'm staying to launch my business, just getting really excited about this growing season. And it helps to have a wonderful gardening community. And right now I want to introduce you to a friend of mine named Dewana Cressy. She goes by Dee. She's my soil sister. She's from Tennessee, and she's the leader of the Garden of Deeden YouTube channel, and she also has a wonderful supportive Facebook group for gardeners, both beginner and experienced. And I'll take you inside in a minute and show you what I got in the mail today from my soil sister Dee. So Dee contacted me in Facebook the other day. Hi Claire. Yes, are you talking? Walkie-talkie. This is all she does all day long. Thinks she has an imaginary friend. So proud of my little 14-year-old. That cat has cataracts and arthritis, and last night she caught a mouse here in the cabin. Good girl. Anyhow, Dee contacted me and said that she had some seeds that are a little bit older and wanted to know if I'd like to have access to some of them just for experiment gardening or seed starting and doing germination tests and things like that. I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting. I was not expecting this. Look at that hoard. I got a box. I was expecting like an envelope with a few little seeds in it. So anyway, Dewana, I appreciate you and your generosity. And what she's done is given me an opportunity. I'll show you what she sent me, but I also want to talk for a minute briefly, especially for those of you who are new to gardening, about seed shelf life. And let's just put some myths to rest, okay? The reason she can send me these and I accept them and I'm excited about them is because seeds last more than one season. So just because a seed packet says packed for 2021, packed for 20, this one says, look at the bottom of that, packed for 2012. Okay, so this is going on a 9-year-old seed going into its 10th year. All right? And what that means is if they've been stored in a cool, dry, dark place, then the viability of the seeds overall will have diminished some over time. But seeds don't die easily. The exceptions to those are some of your root crops like carrots, onions, celery. They are smaller seeds. They don't have as long a shelf life, but even so, I've planted carrots that were 2 or 3 years old and got a crop. Okay? And what it means is for every, in a fresh packet of seed, if you plant 10 seeds, you're probably going to get 9 or 10 plants. Like that's a good germination rate, okay? Even 8 out of 10 is pretty good. If the seed packet is 2 or 3 years old and you plant those same 10 seeds, maybe you're only going to get 6 or 7 plants. If they're older, like some of these packets are, 9, 10 years old. What I'm going to do when I plant these is I'm going to put like 3 seeds in the seed cell. Okay? So I'm not going to get as many individual plants in a cell. But what I'm going to do is up my chances of having something germinate in every cell that has seeds in it under my grow lights. So, for example, these snapdragons, I love snapdragons. There's this beautiful blend of snapdragons. And the seeds are older, and that's okay. I'm going to plant these. These were from 2008, okay? So that's a 13-year-old. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to put one seed per cell. I'm going to put like 4 seeds in the cell. And maybe one will grow. Maybe none will grow. Maybe 2 will grow. If 1 grows, I'll keep it. If 2 grow, I will keep the strongest of the 2 and cut the other one down at the soil level with a little pair of shears in order to stimulate the growth of the one that's viable. But in all of these seed packets, there's still the potential for life. So if you have old seeds, if you have old seed packets, say 3-4 years old, don't throw them away. Instead, when you go to plant them, here's some African marigolds. Isn't that beautiful? French vanilla hybrid. Martha Stewart. What year were these? Let's see. Can we find out? 2005. That's awesome. So what I'm going to do is plant a few of each seed in a seed tray, in a little seed cell. And I'm going to bank on the fact that the germination rates are going to be pretty poor. And so I'm going to put more than 1 seed in. And if I get one, that's great. If I get none, at least I tried. But the chances are that as long as your seeds stayed dry and stayed out of sunlight and stayed out of hot temperatures, there's a good chance that there are going to be some viable seeds in a packet, even older packets like this. Okay? Look at that beautiful crisp head. That's an iceberg lettuce with burgundy. I have never seen a red iceberg lettuce. Right away, this just makes me want to plant this right now. Like, I'm putting up my green stock next week and filling it with soil, and I'm going to start growing in that little shed out there. Packed for 2005. I'm going to give it a shot. Anyway, so Dee sent me this, and I just want to encourage you, if you're somebody who's either inherited old seeds or you found a stash you had forgotten about, or you ordered seeds, like a seed sale. Sometimes you see the seed companies have a seed sale at the end of the season, and you think to yourself, well, I'm not buying last year's seeds because they won't grow. That's not true. A seed packet that's 1, 2, even 3 years old that's been kept cool, dry, and dark will grow. You'll have a pretty decent germination rate. So don't be afraid to plant old seeds. Here, let's real quick just look at what all's in here. There's a dwarf bush fine leaf basil. Oh, yum. It's like one of those globe basil. Beautiful plant. That's so cool. I'm going to try that. What do we have here? Some sweet basil. Eggplant. And, okay, 2 eggplant. Some common thyme. That's a lovely perennial. Sweet marjoram, one of my favorite herbs. This is in the oregano family. And you can substitute it or use it with oregano and in recipes that call for oregano, and it's very good. Lemon basil. Genovese basil, that's your typical Italian large leaf basil. Cool, lots of basil. Spearmint, my mom loves spearmint. Dee included some others. Bachelor buttons. Dee, you're so awesome. Portmund. I'm going to have to look that one up. Lantana. Oh, how exciting. Ham and eggs lantana. That's a beautiful flower. We grew a lot of those in Virginia, but I never grew any from seed. I'm happy to have those. Tithonia, these are beautiful. They're like the Mexican sunflowers. Giant pansies. A cypress vine. Petunias. Tricolor beans. What else is in here? Premium flat Dutch cabbage that are pelleted seeds for easy handling. Let's get these turned around here. Some bib lettuce, one of my favorite types of lettuce to grow. Sweet 100, one of my favorite cherry tomatoes to grow. But I've never grown those from seed. Ah, a container variety of tomato. This is exciting. Balcony hybrid. I love growing small tomatoes. This year I grew Tiny Tim tomatoes. Kung Pao hybrid. pepper. That looks beautiful. I'll show you Dee's message to me. She knows that I love hot peppers. There's a sweet long pepper. Cali Wonder pepper. That's just a standard bell. Looks like an early maturing cabbage. I need that in my season to keep the bugs off it. Yellow pear tomatoes. Those are beautiful. I grew some of these this year and they were wonderful. There's more super sweet 100. Kohlrabi, one of my new favorite vegetables. I only grew it last year for the first time and I loved it. I never even tasted it before. And now I'm a huge fan. Round Dutch cabbage. Brussels sprouts. I love Brussels sprouts. I had zero success growing Brussels sprouts in Virginia. The summers were too hot. The spring was too short. I tried it as a fall crop, but I didn't stay on top of watering. Here in Pennsylvania, with a slightly shorter growing season overall, but a longer spring, I think these will do well as a spring crop. So I'm going to definitely try them again. Look at that big, large leaf basil plant. You know I love my basil. Desico broccoli. This is a very lovely standard heading broccoli, and these are the pelleted seeds that make it easy to handle. Some snowball cauliflower. Awesome. And then she sent this note for the hot mama in me. She knows in previous seed swaps I had asked for specifically hot peppers. So she added some jalapenos. Sorry, I'm doing this one-handed. Serranos, one of my favorite peppers just for all-purpose general cooking. I love serranos. Green serranos I can just eat right off the plant. I'm going to have to start my hot pepper seeds really soon here in January and keep them under the grow lights until May. They take a long time to get started, and because I have such a short summer here in Pennsylvania, zone 6A, the only way I'll get ripe peppers is if I plant them early, keep them under grow lights, and let them get fairly sizable before I put them in the ground to give them a head start on their growing season so they grow to maturity. Cayenne long slim, aren't those beautiful? Cayenne peppers, of course, are great for cooking and making powders. Oh, the things you will grow. Happy gardening soil system. Then she included Count Dracula pepper. Heck yeah. Lemon jalapeno. Cowhorn pepper. Those are really cool peppers. I've never grown one. I've seen them recently in some seed catalogs. Mammoth jalapeno, and new to my garden this year, yellow Scotch bonnet. I'm definitely growing a Scotch bonnet peppers this year. Okay, so anyway, Dee has reminded us that even older seed packets are worth keeping, and all you want to do is double or triple the seeds that you put in the seed tray. You'll get fewer plants, but just because they're older doesn't mean you won't get any plants, okay? You can get on YouTube and Google and search for things like seed germination test to get ideas on how you can test germination rates. But frankly, I don't even fuss with that because I just put my seed starting mix in a 72 cell tray and I keep them labeled very cleanly. You always want to make sure that your rows are labeled. And then I'll just put, you know, anywhere from 2 to 5 seeds, depending on the size of the seed, the size of the baby plant, in those seed trays from these older packets. And I'm bound to get harvest on some of them. Okay, so maybe a few of the packets won't yield any results, but that's okay. At least I tried. And I'm more likely to get some plants out of these than none. So it's definitely worth a shot. All right, welcome to Leah's Leaves, Chapter 2, the Pennsylvania edition. Thanks for joining me here. I'm learning a lot. I'm sharing it here, and I hope you'll come grow with me. Bye.